Hello, dear friends. Today we continue our acquaintance with the surprisingly candid memoirs of a Wehrmacht general. Don't forget to rate the video, and let's get started. March 23rd, 1944. Letter to his wife. I must say frankly that the situation in our homeland is simply unbelievable. No one feels that their life is safe, as one city after another is turned into ruins and ashes. We have created such a mess that we are unable to clean it up. How did this happen? Because our leadership lost its sense of proportion and lost sight of its goal, overestimated its own strength and abilities, and freed people from all the moral constraints imposed on them. The reason why old Fritz wrote his anti-Machiavelli. After all, it was Machiavelli's principles that became the basis for our actions. Now we have had to occupy Hungary, as this country has rushed to the other side. Yes, we were forced to do this, but it is precisely this compulsion that is the best indicator of what our situation really is. In the south of the Eastern Front, our failures are so great that they can only be explained by the fact that our troops have lost their ability to resist due to losses in manpower and equipment. Wherever the enemy advances, our defenses collapse. It seems that the moment when everything will be over, there will soon be reached. This is probably the reason for the Hungarian initiative. In this situation, the success or failure of the landing in France will be decisive. Our fate depends on it. What demands does this situation place on us? It is wrong, or at least imprudent, to focus on any particular borders. After all, Lahr or Staufen, not to mention Luxembourg, may turn out to be extremely poorly located cities. Coburg and its surroundings remain the best option. I cannot shake the feeling that your efforts are misdirected, that you lack an understanding of the real situation. Investing funds in this regard is not the best solution. Why would I need furniture in Staufen or Lahr? Mr. von Biela is acting quite differently. He bought his wife a bracelet, a real carpet, and furs. In doing so, he is investing his money more reliably, and these are movable assets. His wife constantly finds opportunities to buy something like this. It seems to me that they are acting more correctly than you, since you are hauling expensive things to cities that may one day become very unsafe. I would like to explain this to you once again. Deep down, I cannot fully approve of all your plans. Before taking the final step, you need to clarify all the requirements for yourself once again. The purpose of this letter is to tell you this. At the same time, I would like to point out the starting point once again. We are in a serious crisis, and one of our pillars, namely Manstein, is in danger of collapsing. God willing, he will manage to gain a foothold somewhere in the Carpathians. Today there is a snowstorm. In the near future, we can expect a new, very powerful Russian offensive. Yesterday, in good weather, I flew about 60 kilometers over the partisan area. Not a single living soul. Everywhere you look, all the villages are abandoned. It is an ominous sight. March 31st. Report to the family. It seems that tonight the battle between the Dnieper and Chaussee has ended, at least for now. After the critical situation that arose again in the last 48 hours was overcome this afternoon, the enemy was completely driven out of our positions in the evening. It seems that the offensive power of the Russians has now been undermined. The enemy intended to crush our balcony by advancing on Mogilev from the southeast and transferred divisions from other fronts for this purpose. In many areas, they failed to reach the first line of our trenches. Almost everywhere where they took this line, they were already pushed back. Only where he concentrated his strongest and freshest units from the outset does he continue to hold the first line of our trenches on a small section, while we occupy the second. In summary, he has achieved nothing, although he has suffered heavy losses. And all this despite extremely heavy artillery fire and the active use of assault aircraft. In one day, we counted 550 aircraft. Our soldiers fought excellently and flawlessly accomplished their tasks against the superior forces of the Russians. Historical reference. The Soviet offensive on the southern flank of the Fourth Army between Chaussee and the Dnieper was the final point of the Red Army's unsuccessful attempts since October 1943 to make a decisive breakthrough through the positions of the Fourth Army. Before the major offensive in the summer of 1944, calm reigned on this section of the front. April 21, 1944. Letter to his wife. I'm sorry, but on Good Friday you wrote me a rather silly letter. It would be better if I burned it now. First of all, don't tell me that the overall situation is such that all difficulties can simply be ignored. These difficulties are equally great in the military, political, and economic spheres. In the military sphere, there is no reason to despair. But the losses in the South, both in terms of people and equipment, are great, and partially threaten the overall situation on the Eastern Front. At present, attempts are again being made to save the army, or rather what can still be saved of it, from Crimea. It must be transported by sea to Romania and Bulgaria. The enemy is trying to prevent this and says that it has already sunk many ships. Of course, most of them will break through, but some will sink. From our reports, you cannot imagine how much has already been lost this winter due to such encirclements and sieges. That is why Manstein, Kleist, and Roediger were removed, because they saw what was coming and wanted to prevent it. Because of all this, the situation on the fronts, or the general situation on the Eastern Front, cannot be considered successful and poses serious dangers for the future. Realizing this, the Finns and Hungarians have wavered, and the Swedes and Turks are causing us economic problems by prohibiting the export of goods we need. The betrayal of the first two has been neutralized. In Hungary, this was done in a very elegant way, but they are no longer reliable allies who will stand shoulder to shoulder with us in times of danger or need. Realize that due to the, to put it mildly, superiority of the Allies in the air, our industry and transport network have suffered severe damage, which affects not only the defense industry, but also food products. It is here that the loss of southern Russia will become noticeable. The German people, with their strength and will to defend themselves, which they have demonstrated in the 5th year of the war, are truly admirable. But we must clearly understand that the advantage in manpower and technology is not on our side. This is not yet a guarantee of victory for the enemy. May God spare us from it, for it will be terrible. But this possibility cannot be easily dismissed. So, the letter turned out to be very long. It should not cause you any concern. But it should point out to you that the ostrich policy, although pleasant at present, is harmful in the long run. May 29, 1944. Letter to the children. There is no fighting in our sector. We are still waiting for the offensive on Mogilev. The enemy is concentrating its forces in this area, but it is not yet ready to strike. As a result, we hope that the Allied landing will be delayed for the time being. Historical reference. At the end of May 1944, Heinrici fell ill with hepatitis and was forced to take several weeks of leave on June 3rd for treatment and recovery. Therefore, he could only observe from afar the start of the Soviet offensive on June 22, 1944, the collapse of Army Group Center, and the defeat of his Fourth Army between Mogilev and Minsk in the first half of July. July 27, 1944. Letter to his children. All day long I was haunted by a phone call, which, due to damaged communication lines, I was only able to answer late in the evening. The content of the conversation was not very pleasant. I did not need to go to the front, but wait until I was called. Before that, I had to continue my treatment. After extending my stay here twice, I can no longer remain here, nor do I want to. It is time for me to return to my headquarters. But now, I do not know how long the uncertainty will last, nor do I know where I should be. The sad events of recent days have taken our breath away. It is truly a miracle that the Führer remained unharmed after such a powerful explosion. Historical reference. On August 16, 1944, Colonel General Heinrici was appointed commander of the 1st Panzer Army, to which the 1st Hungarian Army was temporarily subordinate. Under Heinrici's command, the army had to endure heavy defensive battles against the Red Army in northern Hungary, eastern Slovakia, and southern Poland. In February through March 1945, it managed to defend the coal deposits near Ostrava. For this, on March 3, 1945, Heinrici received the Knight's Cross with swords. August 19, 1944. Report to the family. Arrived today at my new place of service. To get here from Krakow, I had to make a 9-hour drive. First, the route lay through Galicia, then through all of Slovakia, and then we entered Hungary. We are approximately at the latitude of Budapest. The air temperature is appropriate. They say it was plus 42 degrees in the shade this afternoon. I feel like I'm at the end of the world. I was placed in the villa of a deported Jew, which is very elegantly furnished by local standards. I haven't had such royal accommodation since France. In the evenings, there is almost no blackout. Nevertheless, I cannot shake the vague feeling that the whole local situation is not to be trusted. Somehow I feel uneasy. In addition to the German troops, I also have an entire army of allies under my command. December 22, 1944. Report to my family. The ongoing fighting has prevented me from writing letters lately. I have often been busy from early morning until late at night. Last night, or rather this morning, I hung up the phone at 2 a.m. Now I am fully involved in the fighting in the Kaszau area and further west. Once again, I have a 250-kilometer front, with the northern flank still in Poland and the southwestern flank in Hungary. Once again, I am in command of the remnants of the Hungarian army, and I have 3 different battlefields in front of me, each with its own requirements and needs. Heavy fighting is going on in different areas. The outcome of the battles is constantly hanging in the balance. In the case of the situation east of Kassa, this is not just a comparison. The fighting there is actually taking place on forested mountain slopes 700 to 900 meters high. If we lose the mountain range, the valley below it, where the city is located, will be impossible to defend. The Russians have concentrated their forces in all these dangerous areas, and we have nothing of equal strength to oppose them. If we have nevertheless managed to ensure that in the 14 days since the fighting began, they have advanced only 8 kilometers, this is a gratifying indication of the tenacity with which our troops are fighting, having been engaged in defensive battles for months, weakened by losses, and experiencing incredible physical strain. The overall situation, the expansion of my area of responsibility, and the emerging future developments required us to relocate our headquarters. The resorts on the southeastern slope of the High Tatras seem to be a suitable place to settle. We have been there since yesterday. Here, in this wonderful landscape, we will spend Christmas. It is simply a fairy tale that we ended up here in the middle of the war and during the most difficult battles. The gap between the beauty of nature and what is happening at the front is so great that it is simply impossible to reconcile the two. After spending almost 10 days on the road without a break, I stayed at our headquarters today. In the morning, I allowed myself a short walk in the sunshine with my alpenstock and felt like a vacationer who had arrived in Switzerland in winter. When I returned home, the table was already covered with reports of air raids, heavy artillery preparation, forest battles, tank attacks, and breaches that could not be closed due to a lack of reserves. So you rush from one extreme to another. But this is much easier to accept than the eternal gray emptiness of the Russian autumn sky. With great tension and involvement, we are following our offensive in the west. At last, we have managed to take both enemies and friends by surprise. I had guessed this 6 weeks ago, without knowing any details. We feared that the breakthrough in Alsace would deprive us of the troops intended for the offensive, but the High Command showed great inner fortitude and withstood the blow. We were filled with immense joy at the sight of the enemy, who seemed to be prancing on a beautiful horse, suddenly collapsing under its hooves. In all his publications, Mr. Eisenhower already presented himself as the absolute dictator of Germany. We wholeheartedly wished that his cheap successes, which he had achieved so easily due to his superior technology and enormous human reserves, would turn into defeat. These people, who for years waged war as if nothing threatened them, will now have to experience what we had to go through. And now they must see what it means to be surrounded and to have enemy tanks in their own rear. I hope that in this situation they will enjoy all the pleasures possible. I would be especially happy if we could one day inflict a crushing defeat on them. The Hungarian Corps commander, whose men were fleeing, recently quoted Kossuth to me. "We need at least a tiny victory, Colonel General," and showed me the tip of his little finger. God willing, the victory in this battle in the West will be more than just a tiny one. Perhaps, although one dares not think about it, Mother will still be able to move into her house in Staufen, and perhaps even in Luxembourg. January 7th, 1945. Diary entry. Yesterday I arrived in Carlsbad, not for a course of treatment, but to spend my week-long bomb vacation. Glotterbad is no longer accessible by rail and has been half converted into a military hospital, and my spare home in Staufen has been turned into a command post for the militia division before I even managed to move in. So now I am homeless in Germany and associate the word home with my army headquarters. A soldier might like this, but for a person it is a distortion of the normal course of things. And I don't have any of my belongings right now. After a complicated rescue operation that took weeks, they are now in the Coburg and Hildburghausen area. I don't know exactly where my clothes, shoes, letters, photographs, and other things are. I can look for them at the Duke of Coburg's castle, in the yard of my orderly from World War I, and in 3 other places. In other words, I am freed from the external trappings of private life. Nevertheless, I am content and happy, because I am staying here in a very good hotel, where we had a wonderful time in the summer. Living in a warm and very cozy room, we have charming hosts who do everything to make our life more pleasant. And there is wonderful peace in the beautiful surroundings, as the hotel is officially closed and there are not too many vacationers at this time of year. So I can wander through the light snow and the mountains and beech forests around, where one of the many commemorative plaques from 1795 reads, "How beautiful is nature! How lovely is the divine trace left in this valley." It so happened that when an unexpected and completely unforeseen breakthrough occurred in Alsace, my wife, on my advice, decided to move to Germany. She chose the evening of the first major air raid on the city to leave Freiburg. God protected her, and she survived. 2 bombs hit her hotel, which caught fire and collapsed. Her suitcases and all her valuables, including her jewelry, were destroyed. She left the smoke-filled bomb shelter wrapped in a wet sheet, with no hat, no pair of stockings, nothing at all. After wandering along the way, she ended up in Dresden, where she found temporary shelter in the Weiden sanatorium. Now we will decide here what she should do next. Nothing comes to mind. She has various plans, which I am not yet convinced by. January 31st. Report to the family. The sad events in the East forced us to move further west. Back in Carlsbad, I said that the Russian offensive, which had been months in the making, would not be easy, and the balance of power between the sides seemed far from equal to me. But none of us believed or thought it possible that events would take on such proportions. In East Prussia, Poznan, and Silesia, we can only lament that our wonderful homeland is being so devastated. Everyone is under the impression of these tragic events. For us, the retreat from Poland, led by our northern neighbor, means that we are leaving the High Tatras. It is extremely difficult for us to say goodbye. We will miss the wonderful location, our headquarters, the beautiful winter weather up there, and the giant mountains all around. That's all for today. If you liked the video, please support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. See you all soon.